On Monday, the 18th of May, 2020, which you'll all remember where we were at that time, at the start of the COVID lockdowns, RLUK launched a Digital Shift Manifesto. The manifesto provided a 10-year vision for the research library of the future, an overview of how this vision might be shaped by the digital shift and the tangible steps research library community may need to take to enable its realization. We're now at the midpoint of that 10-year vision. As we look ahead to RUK's next strategy, we want to invite you all to celebrate the manifesto and help us shape the next 5 years. We are delighted to welcome back Torsten Reimer, University Librarian and Dean of the University Library at the University of Chicago, and the first chair of the Digital Shift Working Group. It's my pleasure to hand over to Torsten.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claire, for the introduction. And thank you all for having me back today. I think it's great to be back both with the RUK community, and I recognize a lot of names and some faces, and that's always wonderful. But also to be back with the digital shift, especially now as the program has reached its 5-year milestone, which I think is quite of an achievement. So I think in general, when you are asked to give opening remarks at an event like this, one's sort of contractually obliged to say, why is this work important? I think in this case, it's probably relatively obvious, and one of the, I think, often oversighted example of why this work is important is just simply looking at the, say, the impact that ChatGPT and a few other generative AI tools have had just in the last couple of years out of a whole host of wider areas that I think affect the lives and work of knowledge seekers, of librarians, researchers, students, and quite frankly, at this point, most people across the globe in some form or shape. And that makes it, I would argue, even more important that in the research library community, we have a vision for where we want to go, what's important, and that we understand concerns that we have, potential, and other opportunities. I can certainly, I think, speaking for myself, say that work that I think broadly relates to a digital shift is really dominating a lot of what I do. If you would sort of ask the maybe somewhat infamous man on the Clapham omnibus what a university librarian does, I think has very little match to me. And by the way, I still haven't quite found a good way of explaining to my American colleagues what the man on the Clapham omnibus is. It's not being helped by there's almost every city that I know in the world has at least 2 or 3 in the US, but there doesn't seem to be a Clapham here. There's one in Australia. But anyway, I think irrespective of which person you'd ask about what a librarian does, it at this point is very little reflection with what I do. Just in the last few months, I think I spent the bulk of my work here at the University of Chicago with our Vice Provost for Research and the CIO determining the future computational infrastructure at the university, arguing about liquid cooling versus air cooling for AI data centers, power lines run through the university, data infrastructures, and support and training for faculty and students. And when I haven't been busy doing this, I currently serve on a faculty committee that's looking at the place of artificial intelligence and computational thinking in the core of our student education. These are real challenges and interesting questions and opportunities that we face, and I think that every university faces in some form or way. And they also increasingly play a part in what the library does. And it's not that our libraries have not already been digital. So that's just a couple of things that have a real impact on my work life. And I think I've been, for all of this work, still drawing on some of the discussions and the debate and the inspirations that came out of the digital shift work. And so I'm glad that we're here today having a chance to celebrate this. In some ways, I feel a little bit odd talking about this because it looks almost like I'm grading my own homework and the homework of colleagues that I worked with closely. So from that perspective, I think I want to say a range of really positive and encouraging things, but I also, in the second part of my remarks, want to be a little bit critical. And I'll mostly, I think, focus this on some of my thinking in the digital shift, because we have, I think, achieved quite a few things and laid the groundwork, but there's also a few things where we, I feel, have not gone far enough. and where I hope that the second part of the digital shift work really will give us an opportunity to do this. So starting overall, I think many things that I find are really worth celebrating about the digital shift. To me, the first part and most important part really is simply that this work happened. Going back at the time, I think that a group of libraries got together and dedicated some serious resource to this in a coordinated way was not common. And I think this has been noted internationally. When I moved to the US, there were certainly people who talked to me and who perked up when they realized I was involved in the digital shift. And it has, I think, served as a little bit of an example and blueprint, certainly in some of the countries that I'm more familiar with, where libraries have obviously been thinking about some of these themes, but I think the visibility in which RLUK has addressed this and the boldness of the manifesto have really been noticed, and seems to me, looking from the outside now, has also made RLUK more attractive as a partner. And I would argue it sends a signal that research libraries can embrace and shape change, instead of just being swept away by this. And I think that's an important message for us to get out for our constituents and more broadly. I also think a real success in the way of how this was set up is that RLUK didn't frame this as a standalone program, but it drew on a range of already active activities and networks, and crucially, that it was intertwined with the RLUK strategy. The strategy prompted this to be set up. The work that's been done and input from colleagues and librarians across the world really, I think, has impacted the RLUK strategy. And I think it would be really good for the second phase to repeat this and make sure that it is and it stays closely embedded in the work. I've seen many similar activities in other places that were really well intended, but because they did not have the link to strategy and the core work of the organization that started it, have not been that impactful. And I think I would also be remiss not to say that one really important thing is the work continues. I mean, it's 5 years on. How many sort of community-led collaborative initiatives have really lasted 5 years? And this is in some ways a growing initiative. So I'm really impressed, I think, by the dedication of the community to make this happen, and not being able to take any credit for the last few years. I can really say that it's been an achievement, and I'd like to thank you all also from the perspective of librarians who are benefiting from the digital shift outside of the RLUK community. It was also, I think, really important and a good approach that was taken to make the digital shift forum international from the start, recognizing that RLUK does not have all the answers, but it can play a role as a convener, and that it can help foster a global discussion. And I think that seems to me like is a really important thing, and I would like it to continue. The Digital Shift Forum has been so successful in running a large set of events on a broad set of topics, bringing people in from different backgrounds in different countries. And I would really like to encourage you all to continue this. Perhaps trying maybe to broaden the appeal also a bit further into the global south that has already been achieved. But overall, I think the international approach was the right thing. And then another decision I think that's played out really well is the realization that we will not know exactly what's going to happen. I think that's probably even more true over the next 5 years. And therefore, the most critical thing that we can do, in addition to having this debate, is investing in the skills and in the organizational culture and in our staff, because the only way how we can remain responsive is doing this. That was a key aspect of all the work in the digital shift. And again, to me, it seems that should really continue, because without skilled staff, we're nothing. And then finally, also to highlight, I think we made a decision that's played out really well, which is to be largely technology agnostic. I remember we had some discussions in the early stages. Should blockchain be involved? And I at the time felt like, no, it should not be involved. But there were different perspectives that one could have taken. And I think being technology agnostic and focusing it around the way we work, around our collections and the other themes, strikes me as the right approach. The one exception that we've made to this, I think we have flagged AI very prominently, and that was the right call. But, and with that, I want to sort of shift a little bit. to maybe outlining things that I would like to see more of, or where I feel we haven't quite gotten the balance right, is we centered AI when we put this together, but arguably, given what we've seen in the last few years, maybe not quite enough. For me, my personal digital shift journey started maybe a year and a half or so, or a bit over a year before the digital shift work was launched. When at the RLUK conference in 2019, I gave a talk about the research library in 2030. And the more I thought about this, the more I got really concerned. And I think one of the sort of key themes and arguments that I made is in 2019 that I'm very concerned that publishers and large-scale digital AI companies will develop digital AI assistants and tools that will hoover up all our open content and effectively insert themselves between us and our patrons and knowledge seekers, and that they would do this in a closed way that do not have proper oversight or governance or scrutiny, and that the quality of the information coming out of it would suffer, and that the visibility of libraries in our way to support our patrons would suffer. That, at the time, I think seemed like something I could see on the horizon, and that frightened me somewhat. I think looking around over the last few years, it's already happening, maybe faster than I expected, and somewhat less maybe driven by the big publishers than I expected, but rather now driven by the likes of OpenAI. We've recognized this in the forum. We had a lot of discussion. I think one of the seasons of the Digital Shift Forum really, I think, pivoted and had a lot of great events on AI, and that's great. But it seems to me we have overall maybe spent quite a lot of time talking and maybe not as much time taking really concrete and tangible action. The discussions are really important, but I think we'll face a few choices and issues that we need to address. And I just want to throw out a few. I hope they're provocations. Maybe they're doomsaying. I think that's for you to say. First of all, I'm really concerned about our role in education, what my US colleagues here call our work in instruction. I think we posited in the Digital Shift Forum that digital literacy would be a key part for libraries to invest. I still think that's true. But I'm not sure, at least from where I can see this, we have resourced this properly. If we want to make sure that every student who comes to our universities gets some solid grounding in AI knowledge tools, we'll need a lot of staff to do this. We've done some assessment in our planning here, and we feel that depending on how we do this, if we wanted to train every undergraduate coming to the University of Chicago, we would need 5 to 7 digital and AI literacy librarians. Are we all prepared, if my assessment is correct, to make that kind of investment and put that much effort in and be the place that trains all students coming to our universities in using AI knowledge tools? If we're not doing it, who else is doing it? Will faculty or other units step up? Will we just leave the students to figure this out by themselves? I think if we only continue to train people on the tools that we directly license and the knowledge that we have in our institutions, they will largely not use us anymore because so much knowledge lives outside of our institutions, and AI tools make it very easy to not even touch the library. So we need to, I think really hard about what's our role in student education, digital literacy skills. And if we figure out what we want to do we want to train on library-specific tools or general tools or do nothing or what else? We need to prepare resource this, and this may mean some significant shifts in our allocation of staff resources. I think we also need to think really hard about our role as content suppliers. I'm increasingly now hearing concern from faculty who say they do not want their content to be hoovered up by AI startups who give nothing back to higher education, who damage the environment by throwing a lot of money at computational infrastructure, and by, at least at the moment, giving some somewhat dubious results in terms of the overall quality. That to me seems like a discussion that we need to have. Do we stick to the principles of open access and say we make everything available for everyone and we'll take the cost of being hammered by AI crawlers and the environmental impact? Or do we think some use cases of AI are worthwhile supporting and others not? And are we then prepared to change our policies and our systems, make the investments either to become full-scale AI content providers or to take a more targeted approach. And one can take different views. I'm not saying any of these are right or wrong, but I would really like to see a discussion as a sector to agree on what our strategy is and then pivot our systems and workflows and the way we work um, on doing this and doing this in the right way. And this also seems to me that we need to really think about how we are structured as organizations and what pivots and change we'll need to make to embrace whichever flavor of AI we consider to be the right one. And a crucial one that we need to tackle that the manifesto has recognized, but has become more important than certainly I anticipated, is sustainability. It's already difficult to make our library sustainable. It's become a lot harder. I mean, just recently having read that between, I think, 2019 and 2024, Google's CO2 emissions have increased by about 50%. I don't know what's gone to change in the last year, but it surely will have been another significant impact. This is going to wipe out all the progress that we've made on making our libraries more sustainable if we support AI-based research and teaching. And I'm not sure we've really cracked making our libraries sustainable. I mean, I feel I should know, is it more environmentally friendly to store a PDF or to keep a book? I should know what's the environmental impact of a university-wide digital preservation system. What's the environmental impact of shipping a book versus digitizing the book and lending the copy electronically? We probably sort of know the environmental impact of our buildings, but do we really know the environmental impact of our services? And do we know what our AI operating model is going to be in 5 years and what that environmental impact is and how we're going to balance this? I'm not sure we do. And I'm also not sure we've done enough in standing up to some of the tech company and challenging their approaches to the environmental impact that they cause and to educate our faculty and our students and have that debate. So here are a few, I think, key challenges that I see, particularly linked to AI, but there are also others. One thing that we didn't flag in the manifesto is cybersecurity. I think what happened at the BL, other libraries, or as I've just learned, some of the UK retailers, I think is also a clear message that this is something that we probably should have put more strongly into the manifesto and that I would really encourage you to look at. I don't want to speak just about AI, but also realize that my sort of time is coming to an end. So I just want to just do a very, very quick pivot and look at the vision statement that we had in the manifesto and do a very quick grading in a minute or so. In the vision statement, we said that the UK research libraries in 2030 would be an integral part of the local and global knowledge environment. I think whether we achieve this or not will largely depend on how AI evolves and what stance we take on the issues that we've outlined before. We also said in the manifesto we would be environmentally sustainable. I'm not sure we are on the path to do this in 2030. In fact, I would bet we are not, and it's becoming a lot harder at the moment. We made a commitment to supporting a more diverse set of users and being trusted knowledge resources. I think we're on a good way there, but again, it depends, I think, on how we're embedding ourselves more globally in the AI world. We made some commitments that we would be offering seamless and persistent services for digital scholarship services, but I think we are actually on a good path when it comes to sharing. Whether we've really cracked seamless reuse as we promised, I'm not entirely sure. We had an ambition that we felt our staff should be recognized experts in digital research methods. I've seen a lot of really good work at libraries happen over the last few years, so I think we could be on a good path. But I'm not sure as a sector we've embraced computational research far enough to, in one of those really fast developing fields, make a claim to be their trusted partner and leader. I think that's an area where we should also put more effort into it. We said our print collections will be as easy to discover as our digital ones, and that we have spaces that meet researchers' needs. I think on the space front, it seems to me a lot of good things is happening. I'm not entirely sure our print collections will be as easy to discover as our digital ones. So that to me remains an area of potential focus. And finally, and this is the last point, we've said libraries will in 2030 have mastered the use of artificial intelligence technologies integrated into technology platforms that are open and transparent, built on sustainable and ethical principles. This has become bigger than we thought it would be at the time. It was already ambitious. It's become, I think, vastly ambitious now. And maybe we'll have mastered the use as users, but will we have mastered the use of these technologies as teachers and as educators and as those driving them in the right direction to be sustainable and inclusive? I think we have a long way to go. And I think, and this will be my final comment, the Digital Shift Forum and the wider work could really play an important role. So I would really like to encourage you all to continue this work. And I would in particular like to encourage RLUK overall to say, let's pick one, two, or maybe three things out of what I've outlined, or maybe other things that I may have missed, and pick one or two things in there where we want to make a bold intervention. Let's think hard about what that is. Let's try not to do too many things at once. And let's put some solid effort into this over the next 5 years. So I think a lot of good work's been done. We've built a great platform, but I also think we'll really need it over the next few years with the challenges that I see ahead. So thank you all. If we still have time, I'm happy to take a few questions, and otherwise feel free to reach out to me and we can have a discussion on where I was right or maybe where I'm completely wrong.
Torsten, thank you very much for your words. And unfortunately, we don't have lots of time, so I'm going to move on to our case studies. But I want you to all remember what Torsten's just finished with when we move into the breakout groups about thinking about a couple of things that we can concentrate on and how we can be bold in those areas. I think that's a really good challenge for us all to take forward over this next piece of work. And thank you very much, Torsten, for joining us. Not quite sure what the time is for you, but I know it's much earlier in the day, so thank you all for joining us. And now I'm going to move over to Dan Pullinger, my colleague at the University of Leeds. So I'm delighted to hand over to you, Dan.
So hopefully I'll pick up on a couple of issues that Torsten has raised there, particularly in terms of digital literacy. So I'm Dan Pullinger. I'm Head of Learning Development at University of Leeds Libraries. I'm just going to spend the next 5 minutes talking about digital capabilities development at our university. What challenge did we face in terms of this area? So our university strategy sets out that we will support our staff and students to harness the potential and manage the challenges of digital technologies, data, and digital approaches through ongoing professional development, support, and guidance, which is a great ambition to have. But what we recognised very quickly was that there really was a real gap at the university in terms of coordinated digital learning provision for students and indeed staff. There were lots of pockets of good practice, but there was no real ownership of this particular agenda. If we think back to 2020, when the Digital Shift Manifesto was published, and we look at the GIST Digital Insights survey results for Leeds from back then, only 43% of student respondents felt they'd been given guidance on digital skills, and 22% believed a digital skills training assessment had been provided. So that provided us with some evidence of where we needed to address what had been a shift in digital expectations and behaviour of our students and our staff, but where we lacked suitable skills, suitable digital literacies provision. But we felt that the library was well positioned to respond to this particular need. So Torsten mentioned about recruiting staff to support this area. Back in 2022, we were able to recruit 3 digital learning advisors, full-time members of staff, who joined our learning development team within the library. So they brought some expertise in digital tools and pedagogies to our team, and they helped to design and deliver digital learning opportunities both within the curriculum and a co-curricular offer as well. And importantly, they collaborate closely with academic and professional services colleagues. So our learning development team has expanded its remit to cover digital literacies, digital capabilities, and we see this as an opportunity to complement our academic skills provision. So not digital skills just out on their own to one side as a separate offer, but really weaved in with that academic skills provision that we offer to our students. And importantly, our approach is, where possible, to weave that development into the curriculum and to collaborate with academic colleagues to deliver that digital capability support. So we only have 3 digital learning advisors, but we have 40,000 students. It's absolutely crucial that our academic colleagues work with us on that digital capability development and co-design, co-deliver that support within programs. And of course, that has implications in terms of making sure that those staff themselves have the digital capabilities that are needed. We also opened in 2023 a library makerspace, emulating some of the facilities that were already available in many public libraries. And we see this as an opportunity for giving our students and our staff a space for digital and analog experimentation and creation. And we also, the most important resource within that makerspace is our makerspace specialist, a full-time member of staff who supports activity in that space. So he brings support and expertise and allows students and staff to explore, experiment, innovate in that space, regardless of their subject background or their interests. We also wanted to make sure, in terms of digital skills, digital capabilities, that there was an institution-wide approach. So I formed and chair an institutional digital capabilities working group, and its key purpose is to coordinate that collaboration between professional services and academic colleagues, so working across different services, different faculties, on the development and promotion of digital capabilities, opportunities, development of learning resources, both for staff and for students. So a key aim was to make sure we had a shared vision, a shared set of objectives, and shared terminology in the way that we were talking about this work. I mentioned that we had pockets of good practice already. We wanted to get a proper oversight of that, to be able to share good practice, share resources, be efficient in our approach. One of the first things we did was to introduce institutionally the GIST digital capabilities framework as a basis for that shared terminology and that shared approach. We also use the GIST discovery tool to give staff and students the opportunity to evaluate their own digital skills development and to signpost them to relevant support that's available. We've also been doing some work at the institution on revisiting the Leeds curriculum. We have a project called Curriculum Redefined. We have placed digital capability development as a core element of that framework. And it also features in the skills matrix that we are developing for students to help them develop their own skills based on their own particular needs and preferences. And we have an approach now where skills learning outcomes are required for all modules and programs that are developed at the university, and digital skills are one set of options to appear within those outcomes. We have an open program of digital capabilities workshops led by library colleagues as well, with contributions from other services and from academic colleagues, and hopefully in the near future from more students as well. It's important we have student voices as part of this. And the group is also coordinating collaboration on digital communication, so actually sharing the digital offer in a consistent way, evaluation of the impact of what we're doing, and, as Torsten mentioned earlier, importantly, training support around use of artificial intelligence. So what difference has it made? Well, there have been early signs of improvement in the student experience. The most recent digital capabilities, digital insights survey results showed increases by 12% and 14% in those scores. But that was at an early stage before we'd fully developed this offer. So we're hoping to see in the next survey, which will run in November 25, another rise in those scores. There's a clearer, more coordinated digital capabilities provision now established at the university, with increased student and staff engagement in that offer. And importantly, I feel that that collaborative approach is now established and then it's being emulated in other areas of practice and priority at the university as well. So in terms of our next steps, We want to have a particular focus on digital skills development of our staff. So there's a collaboration between our organisational development and professional learning service and our digital education service to support staff development in digital skills, underpinned by resources like the GIST Discovery tool. And we are carrying out various pilots in professional services, including the library, in terms of identifying the digital capabilities needs of our staff of particular teams, putting in a programme to support that development. We're developing some mandatory AI tutorials for staff and students that will launch in the new academic year. We're expanding our online provision in terms of content we're making available for staff and students to engage with in their own time. There'll be further collaboration on the workshop series. We're also thinking about digital hidden curriculum issues. So how can we introduce digital issues at that welcome induction transition stage, so pre and post arrival for students and indeed for staff. We're also looking at how we can improve our digital accessibility training for staff and for students who are involved in creation. And we'll be developing an action plan in response to the forthcoming GISC survey results as well. Okay, I think that's it for my time. So I will stop sharing my slides. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan. And now I'm going to hand over to Sarah Molloy from Queen Mary, University of London.
Thanks very much, Claire, and everybody for having me along this afternoon. My name is Sarah Molloy. I'm Head of Research Support. I'm also Project Lead for the Centre for Digital Collections, which I'm going to talk briefly about today at Queen Mary, University of London Library Services. So why a Centre for Digital Collections? So over the last few years, as probably true of many research libraries and other libraries, is actually that library services is more and more being considered as research infrastructure, so part of the infrastructure that enables research to happen. And so out of conversations with various bodies within the institution came this idea and came this need to enhance the support for research projects, particularly around our archives and special collections, but other analogue and born digital materials as well. And that through the university's work, through its Centre for Creative Collaboration, that we create opportunities to inspire and capture works from creative and artistic practice, and also through a scheme called Students as Producers. And then finally, to support ongoing work, the pipeline of new technicians and other experts through placements, training and skills exchange. And that's both into professions, into the library professions, the archives profession and elsewhere, but also within the local community organisations through the Civic University Agreement. And so the centre is funded through our Research Capital Infrastructure Fund in the university, which comes from Research England investment. So what is the centre? It's a collaborative centre. It's a hybrid centre, so it exists in both physical and the virtual world. It's a collaborative piece with our academic colleagues who are very much the drivers of the initial idea for this work. And consists of the studio, which will allow us to digitise and to process digital material in a much more enhanced way, in a much better way than we have been able to up to now. Will allow us to digitise content where we weren't able to do so professionally at the moment and in the past, where we maybe had to send that material out externally. And it's also very proactively, very decisively have located the studio in a prominent public location in our Mile End Library, so that staff and students, as they're moving about the space, they can see the work that's going on there with the idea that this might also inspire others to kind of consider what is this thing that they're doing. We've also, for the first time, recruited people with specialist skills in heritage photography, in asset management for archives and special collections, where we previously had relied on our archives team. And so we now have a larger and more with an enhanced set of skills. And then we'll be looking at a discovery and access platform with a way to virtually engage with those collections as we make them available. But we'll also be retaining both the studio and a physical engagement space. So we haven't designed the physical engagement space yet. That's kind of next up later on. But the idea being that we explore that relationship between the physical and the digital in both the physical and the digital world. And then through the platforms that we are able then also to introduce hybrid exhibitions, which we have not easily been able to do until now. So the image on the right-hand side, this is the first bits of kit that have arrived, which is what we have called the Beast, which is our high-spec workstation computers, and which was very exciting when they arrived. So where are we at the moment? The hoardings on the left of the image, behind that is where the studio will be. It's currently under construction. We have recruited our digital asset specialist, John Nichols, who joined us in March, and he comes with significant expertise in heritage photography, digital asset management, and it's been really, really helpful in those first days. We've kind of spoiled him a little bit because he's been able to help us make decisions about designing the studio, deciding on like simple things like paint colors and the layout of the space and the kinds of equipment, additional equipment that might be needed, all those sorts of things. So that's construction is due to finish in early July, and then in the meantime we are working on procuring the digitalization equipment, finalising the procurement of a digital asset management system and preservation systems, and at the same time we'll be doing some engagement work through our academic colleagues and local community groups to understand what we could and should be prioritising in terms of our collections. And then, all being well, the centre is expected to open around November, December time, and then really be fully operational from January. I have February penciled in for an event to mark the launch of the centre and to really think about what we do in the future, and also just to mark the completion of that piece of work. So that's where we are at the moment. We will have more to come. But it's still very much a work in progress. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Sarah. And next, I'm going to hand over to Laura Smith-Brown from the University of Liverpool.
Yes, so hi everyone. I'm Laura Smith-Brown, and I'm the Head of Special Collections and Archives at the University of Liverpool. So I was just going to talk about digital scholarship at the university with our special collections and archives and our museum and galleries collections as well. So primarily this has been around our new digitization workflows and practice and our new online platform, the Digital Heritage Lab. Oh, sorry, I've gone too far there. There you go. And Digital Heritage Lab. So we've been at the very beginning of that journey. We're a year in, just over a year in. Prior to that, we had minimal digital presence and minimal infrastructure as well. So over the last year, we launched our Digital Heritage Lab last year. There's been a lot of work, and the Digital Heritage Lab is there to showcase our collections, to draw links across them. That's really important, making those connections, and to enable us to examine our collections at scale and tell new stories as well. So like I said, we're sort of at the beginning of our digital journey, and we've been looking and exploring new digital scholarship opportunities through this really. So for example, curated digitized items on the Digital Heritage Lab. So we're very much going for a curated approach with different collaborators, including our staff, our researchers and our students. These are delivered alongside wider curatorial and engagement activities and training and research as well. So it's very focused and targeted what we're digitizing and putting online. An example of this, for example, is science fiction writer Olaf Stapledon's material. So a researcher based in the English department worked with our sci-fi curator, selected previously unpublished lecture notes, dust jackets, some of his famous time charts, and this was a proof of concept project, which was important. And the department was looking at how this material, now that it's online, can be used as a teaching resource, and including for local schools, which we wouldn't have been able to do before. So this is a small scale example. A larger scale example now is an AHRC Riches project, which is between libraries, museums and galleries and National Museums Liverpool. And through our digital tools, we aim to reunite archaeologist John Garstang's very scattered archaeological finds, which are in various regional, national and international museums. And its aim is for the objects and the Garstang archive, which is Special Collections and Archives, to be globally visible, accessible and usable, including with the countries of origin, so for example Egypt and Sudan, through an online portal. So this is a really great example of traditional scholarship, so that identification and documentation of objects going hand in hand with digitization and digital metadata and tools such as IIIF and greater search functionality as well. So there's been new opportunities as well in terms of exploring, enabling and providing digital tools for ourselves as a staff and our users to support scholarship. So I've mentioned before there about search functionality. So the Digital Heritage Lab has IIIF functionality and the content is text searchable. So everything, pretty much everything is OCR'd. We're also testing internally using transcribers as well with other projects, and also people being able to download the metadata. Currently, this is per item, but potentially in future, it's about looking at how people can download and interact with our metadata at scale as well as a research tool. So I've just got a couple of images here to show sort of the processes we've got in place. So this shows some of the Garstang archive material being digitized, and here's some images as well of the digitization studio. So this has all been set up in time for the launch last year. We've got new staff members overseeing the sort of the digital heritage operations. We have a digital imaging specialist in place now, and part of their roles has been to set up the digitization studio and set up those workflows. So, when people approach us with ideas, how do we take those ideas forward? But specifically around our own internal workflows, especially around metadata as well, and how that metadata is created, best practice. So that's all been set up, and all those new processes for us over the last year or so as well. So that's been really great. So yeah, overall, next steps. So I suppose at the moment, digital scholarship is still quite new for us. It exists for us in quite a few different forms, and it's an area that we are continuing to explore as well. So this is looking at continuing that curation and collaboration. I think creating that wider community around our digital scholarship is really important, and we're looking to continue to develop that. It's about looking at what sort of availability of innovative IT that are currently at our fingertips that we need to explore more and continue to develop that as well alongside traditional scholarship practice, and just for us to be able to see what is going on in the wider sector as well is really important. An important part of all of this project as well is that it's proof of concept. So the lab is proof of concept until this autumn. And that was really important for us to have that sort of that freedom to fail, to be able to test what we're doing, to see what's working, what maybe didn't work so well. So part of that development has been to have that freedom as well to explore. And I think hand in hand with that to enable us to see what our skills development is around that for us as staff, but also for our users as well, and linking in with wider work in the library about skills development for our students as well as digital skills. We've also got to think about our own sustainable practice. It's part of our Digital Heritage Lab principles that our content is sustainable. So can it be reused? You know, how would it be repurposed for other projects and research? So we really need to continue to reflect on this. How can we build this into our and our collaborators' practice around our digital content? And metadata as well. So obviously the lab itself needs metadata, it creates metadata, but it has to link into our wider metadata for our collection management systems as well. So for example, some of our metadata for the collections isn't online. We're currently moving across to a new collections management system. So it's about linking these systems together and reviewing and potentially enhancing our metadata as well. So that was just that's the link to Digital Heritage Lab. That was just a sort of very quick run through of our digital journey. And that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you, Laura. And now I'm going to hand over to William Nixon, who's going to tell you a bit more about the Digital Shift Maturity Survey.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much. As Claire said, I'm the Deputy Executive Director for RLUK, and I just want to say a few things about the Digital Shift Survey, which we ran over the last couple of years. And I think thank you so much to the RLUK members who responded to this. They've given us a really rich seam of data, and I think some of the sort of headline results from that I think really resonate with some of the comments which Torsten had made, and also just thinking about how exciting it is to see the work being done across scholarship spaces and skills in RLUK member libraries. So as Torsten commented, the digital shift is also one of the strands of RLUK's strategy, and I think it has been really, the manifesto has been invaluable in really sort of informing that and giving us a bit of a roadmap around some of the activities and work which we're going to do. I'm not going to say much more about this. I think it's really been very eloquently done by our speakers, but really it was just to highlight that the manifesto was made up of these sort of 4 dimensions: skills and leadership, scholarship and collections, spaces, and that included physical spaces and not just digital spaces. We're really interested in that intersection between physical and digital, and also our stakeholders, not only within our own institutions, but more widely with funders. And again, as Torsten had commented, opportunities where the digital forum has enabled us to reach out to colleagues beyond RLUK and more internationally. So moving from 4 to 13, we have 13 principles which we established that would help us realize the vision of the digital shift. I'm not going to go through all 13 of these principles. I just sort of bring them up here just as an aide-memoire of some of the underpinning of the Digital Shift Manifesto. But what I really want to do is I'm going to pick out 6 of them. 3 which through our survey we identified as areas that we were sort of the most mature, or we felt that we had developed in, and 3 which we felt were the least mature. And I think some of the areas that were least mature might not be a surprise to some colleagues. And then I'll say a little bit about some work that we've done in revisiting the survey. So the 3 areas at the time that we identified were most mature were to be trusted within our institutions and trusted to work beyond our professional boundaries. There was some positivity around sustainable investment in digital. I suspect if that was to be rerun today, that might be perhaps slightly less mature. And also that we had very much defined our role in open research. And I just want to say a couple of things about each of those. Trusted within our own institutions was sort of the most mature, and it was really sort of underpinned by the strong collaborative relationships which we have. that libraries are seen as trusted leaders within the institutions. They will sort of pick up and identify opportunities to expand their influence and look beyond their traditional boundaries, although there was some comments around the fact that sometimes there's still a perception around the library and what the librarian should and shouldn't get involved with. But really how important it has been for the library in driving digital and transformational change, being integral to those digital transformation initiatives, seeing some of that work that Dan was sharing, for instance, at Leeds, and also some ongoing activity around those relationship building that we need to do within our institutions. But I think there are those challenges around sort of perhaps professional silos, but really it was sort of very, very positive around where the library was sitting in that digital space. Sustainable investment. There was a commitment to sustainability here. This was around ensuring digital sustainability, thinking about maintaining high quality services and resources, even despite sort of financial constraints. Thinking about funding and budget opportunities, thinking about how we could optimize sort of funding, looking at where you could get additional resources, thinking about achieving cost savings. I think this is particularly an interesting dimension as we think about the big deals and how we go into some of our relationships there with publishers, and thinking then around our collaboration with institutional and external stakeholders, where kind of libraries have demonstrated they can really do some innovative things within sort of financial constraints. They're really aware of that financial envelope, but that hasn't been a dampener to sort of ambition and trying to sort of innovate, and also just sort of ongoing activities looking at cost saving measures, thinking about joint procurement and optimizing existing resources. And then I think I was really delighted to see that this scored kind of very maturely as a role in defining discovery and access in an open research context. The highlights here around the strong commitment to supporting open research through policies, initiatives, and infrastructure, about the library's clearly defined role around discovery and access, scope around collaboration and leadership, particularly in that space, seeing as the experts, the go-to body within the institution, and ongoing improvements and new challenges. We've seen the rise of kind of rights retention statements. I think there's some challenges around kind of non-traditional outputs, the continuing growth and sustainability of our repositories in that open research infrastructure and how we can continue to sustain those. And the three areas that we identified were least mature. So I think anyone following along with Torsten's bingo card, steering and engaging around kind of AI. So as Torsten commented, we had identified AI in 2020, but perhaps yes, there's more work to be done in that space. Challenges around environmentally sustainable infrastructure, and also working transparently in closed systems, thinking about the sort of black box and the vendor situations that we are in. So thinking about steering and engaging with AI, really recognizing, yes, there is that potential, as many libraries are beginning to explore that. It's great to see some of the initiatives around kind of digital and AI literacy, but really there's a lot of work to be done there. However, many institutions, particularly around teaching initially, have actively engaged in institutional discussions. I think there's a lot of work to be done around staff expertise and capabilities, looking at developing sort of those skills and areas. Some challenges in adoption and implementation. What are the guardrails? Which are the best sort of platforms? Where do we sit with vendors? Where do we sit at an institutional level? There's a recognition that it can transform our kind of how libraries work and how we manage data, but it feels sometimes that we are perhaps still just sort of nibbling around the edges of that. And then I think that whole question around AI and environmental sustainability, how much do we actually know about how much the environmental impact of AI and what it is having around some of that use? And I think that leans into as well some of the challenges around our environmentally sustainable infrastructure, our challenges in reducing carbon footprints, our inclusion, but starting to look at how we can include sustainability in strategic planning, what kind of sustainable practices we have, and all of these sort of new sustainability strategies, thinking about environmental goals, where we sit within the institutions, and where we can take action on energy and kind of waste as part of some of those initiatives. So there's some real challenges around kind of carbon footprints, some challenges around transparency there. But again, it was really valuable just to see that being surfaced. And then I think libraries are navigating challenges posed by a reliance on proprietary digital platforms, services, and collections. So there was kind of comment around our commitment to transparency, what options we have, some of the risks from market consolidation, how we can empower our users so that they are aware of, again, coming back to that literacy, not just AI, but just critical thinking and what it is they are accessing, what those results actually mean. Advocating for open systems, some of the activities that we've done through the Digital Shift Forum in highlighting some of the infrastructure and options internationally, and just challenges in balancing transparency with all of that, thinking about dealing with this imperfect market economy, which we are sitting in. So looking ahead, again, we really want to continue to strengthen that strategic foresight, think about what our investment in digital skills looks like, thinking about our open research infrastructure, thinking about our space and systems. And I'm very mindful of Torsten's provocation at the beginning, and not just thinking about these, but are there particular areas that we really do want to sort of focus on and take forward? And then just as closing, I wanted to comment, thinking about AI and the rich data set. We did some work kind of earlier this year, revisiting the Digital Shift Maturity Survey around that with AI, thinking about creating a sort of prompts around this, thinking about it as a project. Just in kind of early June, there'll be a short blog post coming out with the revised update of the report. And I just wanted to sort of highlight that it was a very interesting exercise, that thinking about how the data should be structured, thinking we forced ChatGPT to actually show some of its working so that we could sense check it. Where it had more data, it provided some kind of richer responses. Human oversight and intervention is absolutely critical. It was a fairly iterative process, and different models and indeed different platforms, your mileage may vary. But it was also really interesting to have it identify where there were potentially gaps. And Torsten had mentioned cyber resilience, cyber security, and that was absolutely something which really wasn't baked into the original manifesto. It's something which RLUK has a task and finish group working on, and we're developing a toolkit around cyber resilience, which we will launch later this year. But again, very useful to do that as an exercise. So watch this space and we will make that available. And thank you very much for your time and attention. And thank you very much to all the colleagues who are on the Digital Shift Working Group and who have supported the work around both the survey and the delivery of the manifesto. So thank you so much.